What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best entertainment related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. One of my favorite horror franchises of all time is the Dead Space franchise, guys. This is a franchise that spans back to 2008, was one of the most terrifying video game experiences at the time, in my personal opinion, and I absolutely love this franchise. And I've been talking on the YouTube channel a number of times about wanting to get a sequel made at some point or another, and you guys can check out all the Dead Space 4 content on the YouTube channel here. But what I want to go ahead and talk about, guys, is everything that we know so far about Dead Space 4. Is this a game that's coming? And the things that we may know or may completely not know as far as the information that has come out. The rumblings are out there that a Dead Space 4 very well may be in the early stages of development. And this has been going on now for a number of years, guys. There's been talks that there was going to be a Dead Space game or a continuation of the franchise at a number of stops along the way here, along the journey, since this series essentially came to a indefinite hiatus in 2013. So I think what we have to do, guys, we got to look at the history here of Dead Space to kind of determine what's going on as far as with Dead Space as a whole. And then with Dead Space 4, what are the things that we know at this point, and what can we really do as far as that being, you know, from a speculation perspective, and when we may be able to see this game come out. At the end of the day, guys, nothing's been confirmed. Dead Space 4 is not something that is for sure coming at this point. It's going to come down to the community voicing their opinion to EA to try to get this title made at some point along the journey here. But with that, guys, as far as from Dead Space, we got to go kind of back to the beginning here. And on Wikipedia, guys, Dead Space, that page, it reads, the video game series has been commercially and critically successful, selling over 10 million copies. The first game and its sequel received widely positive reviews from the majority of critics, and the first game has received a number of industry awards for many different elements of its gameplay and development. So, number one here, guys, is usually when there is a hiatus, whether that's an indefinite hiatus or a limbo state of a franchise in the video game industry, usually it's one of two reasons. Number one is if that indefinite hiatus happens because of poor sales or because of poor reception, like from a critical standpoint, it's very poor. Usually those are the things that really hurt a franchise from ever getting a continuation. So at first, guys, from the outside looking in, 10 million copies is a lot of copies, guys, for a video game franchise. Now, what we really have to look at, though, is Dead Space 3. So Dead Space 3, guys, came out in 2013, and look, this was a game that really had a lot of hype around it because it was kind of, you know, see really this conclusion of the trilogy potentially, or kind of lead us into the next, you know, generation of the Dead Space universe. But the problem was that EA decided to go a different direction with Dead Space 3 as well as Visceral Games. The game received positive reviews from game critics upon release. Reviewers praised the game's rewarding action gameplay, although criticism was directed at the focus on action over horror, as well as a weak and unfocused story compared to its predecessors. Despite poor sales, EA and Visceral expressed interest in a sequel, and then, however, Visceral Games was shut down in 2017, and there is no confirmation that a new installment in the series is being developed by another studio. So with that, guys, look, what you have to look at from this perspective is that, okay, EA and Visceral Games, they actually thought about making a sequel even with poor sales. But Visceral Games, of course, got shut down, guys, in 2017. And what I got to say is that there was apparently a lot of concepts for Dead Space 4 or the continuation from Visceral before they got shut down. So it's really unfortunate that we won't see Dead Space 4 from Visceral Games. But I do think that the downfall for the Dead Space universe was Dead Space 3 because they went in this direction of action over horror. And I talk about this all the time in many different games out there, guys. When we talk about Call of Duty, we talk about Assassin's Creed, we talk about a lot of these different games that went away from the formula for a period of time. It's just unfortunate that Dead Space didn't have as big of a fan base to withstand the blow like that of Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. But with that, guys, Dead Space 3 was, the valley when you had peaks with, of course, Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2. So that's kind of the first part here. Now, later down in this page on, of course, the Dead Space 3 Wikipedia page, the canceled sequel, Videogamer.com reported information from a confidential source concerning the cancellation of Dead Space 4 following lower than anticipated sales of Dead Space 3, having fallen 26.6%. This information tallied with EA Label's president Frank Gibu's comment that in general we're thinking about how we make this a more broadly appealing franchise, because ultimately you need to get to audience sizes of around 5 million to really continue to invest in an IP like Dead Space. EA's Peter Moore wrote of the story on GamesIndustry.biz forum, standard shabby website journalism recipe. EA described the report as patently false. In June 2013, EA Games boss Patrick Soderlund stated that although the franchise has not been canceled or remained an important brand for the company, developer Visceral Games had not been asked to start work on a sequel and were instead involved in a new project, which was later confirmed to be Battlefield Hardline. On October 17, 2017, Visceral Games was shut down by EA, officially leaving the future of the series uncertain. So look, at the end of the day, we can break this all down to a number of things here, guys. But really, when we look at it, it's definitely that Dead Space 3, that was the problem here, right? That they went in this direction of action over horror, which is going away from what, the series was all about and what made it special in the first place, when they were trying to chase a trend of like these action games that are out there. But that's not what Dead Space is, and that's not what made people love the franchise so much. So will it ever come back, guys, is a huge question based upon EA, really EA here. And will they ever bring it back as a soft reboot potentially? Could they maybe sell the IP to someone else? I mean, I just think that Dead Space needs to continue to exist within the landscape of gaming. It's one of the best horror games out there, in my personal opinion. Now, in an article, guys, that was written by Sean Farner of Looper, there's no denying the success of Dead Space, a game that took the survival horror franchise on a trip to the stars. We can, however, debate the success of the Dead Space franchise as a whole. The first game was a hit and is still worth a play however you can get your hands on it. The Dead Space sequels, however, were mediocre at best, which I disagree with that, guys. I thought Dead Space 2 was even better than the first one, in my opinion, but then Dead Space 3 was obviously the downfall. But this fact and many others stand in the way of the world ever getting a fourth Dead Space game. While Return the series isn't a total impossibility, we did get a new Half-Life after all. There may be too many roadblocks in the way for a comeback to be feasible. So Dead Space lost its way at the end of the day, guys. As previously mentioned, the first Dead Space was an instant classic. Fans and reviewers alike had nothing but good things to say about the original story of necromorphs on a ravaged space freighter. They were far more happy with how the series changed following, or far more unhappy with how the series changed following that release. The last two Dead Space titles were less survival horror and more action-adventure, which I do disagree with that overall, guys. Sure, I can see, you could see a little more action in Dead Space 2, but it was very apparent that they were going action over horror in Dead Space 3. They were actually adding a little more action elements to Dead Space 2, but it was definitely still way more horror than it was action. It changed, though, with Dead Space 3. The frozen wastes introduced in the third game were contentious to say the least. And the fact that Dead Space 3 ends with an outright invasion of Earth, yeah, people didn't like that either. Now, one of the big things we already talked about, guys, Visceral Games was shut down. Dead Space was developed by the talented folks at Visceral Games, a studio that had previously adapted movies like The Lord of the Rings for the video game screen. Dead Space was Visceral's first IP. Unfortunately, following its 2008 success, many of the game's core creators moved on to other studios. And so this left Visceral unprepared for the demands of a AAA franchise. It also led to the aforementioned shift in the next two Dead Space titles. and of course they weren't as well received. Visceral worked on a few other games over the years, including Dante's Inferno and Battlefield Hardline. I didn't like Battlefield Hardline. I actually thought Dante's Inferno had some interesting elements to it, even though I wouldn't say it was like a great game. It had some interesting elements to it. So Visceral, guys, it's really unfortunate that they were shut down. All these people lost their jobs. A lot of them moved on to other companies, which is good. But in 2008, Dead Space introduced us to Isaac Clarke, a lowly engineer forced to fight his way off a zombie-infested spaceship. It was an instant hit. Dead Space racked up over 2 million sales, nabbed a handful of awards, and seemed set as the next big thing in survival horror. But then, of course, Dead Space 2 arrived in 2011, Dead Space 3 hit in 2013, and then nothing. While publisher EA claims that Dead Space is still important to the studio, a sequel still hasn't happened. So Dead Space 3 didn't sell well, which we already talked about, guys. In an interview with CVG, former Electronic Arts president Frank Gibeau said, ultimately you need to get an audience size of around 5 million. Sadly, Dead Space 3 didn't sell anywhere close to 5 million copies in its first week of release. Dead Space 2 shipped nearly 2 million copies, almost twice as much as the original game. By contrast, Dead Space 3 only moved 605,000 units. Guys, that's a huge drop. I mean, they didn't even break 1 million units, guys. That's a big deal, and that's really unfortunate. Now, what does that mean, though? That means that, in my opinion, if they were to invest in this IP to continue, which I believe that they should, that being EA, I really think they need to go back to the roots of this thing. They need to go back to what made Dead Space so great in the first place, which is the horror over the action, number one. But number two, and I believe that they would do that, but number two is maybe do a soft reboot. Maybe it's not called Dead Space 4. Maybe it's called Dead Space, whatever, Resurgence or something, where it's, something that is kind of bringing us back to it, especially with the next generation hardware that's coming out, guys. It could do really well as far as from a graphical standpoint. You can, of course, add multiplayer elements. You can add co-op elements to it. I just think that they need to stick with the horror over the action at the end of the day, which is what it sounds like they would have done with Dead Space 4 if they ever would have had the chance to do that, being Visceral Games. Now, but, so that was enough to become the best-selling title of February 2013, but remained well below Electronic Arts' initial estimates, which indicated that Dead Space 3 was on track to become the best-selling title in the franchise. Dead Space 3's failure contributed to EA's year-on-year revenue loss in 2013, likely making it difficult to justify a sequel. Now, Dead Space 3, guys, it did get, in my opinion, decent reviews at, overall. I mean, it didn't do as good, that being Dead Space 3 versus that Dead Space 2 or Dead Space 1, but it still was pretty good in my personal opinion. I mean, you look at Dead Space 2 ranked even higher than the first one, and so that's why I believe Dead Space 2 is one of my favorite horror games of all time. Now, video game horror is changing. You won't find Dead Space unique dismemberment system or its silent zero-gravity set pieces in other survival horror games, but for the most part, Dead Space plays it by the book. A creepy atmospheric world inspired by big-budget Hollywood blockbusters, lots of villains, and too few bullets, buckets and buckets of gore, and plenty of haunted house-style jump scares. But horror gaming has changed a lot since 2008, when the first Dead Space hit consoles. In 2014, Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro's Playable trailer, which was PT, spooked players with haunting surreal imagery and shifting geography, not intentionally unbalanced combat, and frenzied inventory management. Resident Evil 7 took the long-running franchise into a first-person perspective and dialed the action way, way back, which is very true. Now look, PT, we never got Silent Hills, guys. That's number one. Number two, Resident Evil 7 was incredible. One of the most terrifying games I've ever played, ever. I believe it's one of the scariest games ever made, that being Biohazard. But that doesn't really justify, to me at least, yes, it's kind of changing, but I think what happened with Dead Space was it was changing in a negative way, where it was going into the action segment, but they could easily turn that back, where it's, with a soft reboot or something of that nature, where it goes back to the roots of what, of horror. And just because some of these other games are doing it like a little bit different or whatever the case might be, I still think that Dead Space should coexist with other, games in the genre. Now, this is interesting because the Dead Space creators, guys, have stated they moved on to other things. However, These guys have stated in the past that they want to make Dead Space 4. There was even initial concepts and such, guys. There was even imagery, that being actual, pictures and artwork done around Dead Space 4. Very early concepts, of course. Glenn Schofield, who created Dead Space, left Visceral and Electronic Arts in 2009 to form his own company, Sledgehammer Games. Wright Bagwell, lead gameplay designer on Dead Space and creative director on Dead Space 2, joined Zynga in 2011, where he led the design team on Farmville 2. Steve, Visceral's vice president and general manager and the lead executive on all the Dead Space games, departed EA in 2015. In other words, many people who created Dead Space have moved on. Obviously, a new crew could pick up where the old one left off in game development. That happens all the time. Given that the major complaint of Dead Space 3 was that the game pushed the franchise away from its roots, however, it's hard to imagine that a team without the unique passion and insights of the original could capture Dead Space's unique blend of action, despair, and horror. Which I disagree with, though. I actually believe that another company could actually take it and really turn it into something special. Now, we've seen this many times, guys, where it doesn't work out, okay? 343 Industries with Halo. Now, I'm not going to say that they're never going to make a good Halo game, but what I'm getting at is that 343, they were given the IP, and then they didn't do, what people thought was going to happen. They thought it was going to maybe be actually a really good reimagining of the Halo universe, and that just wasn't the case. The same thing can be said with many other different, companies out there, guys. There's time and time again, we see this happen in the gaming industry where different companies get the chance, and sometimes they do really well and they actually run with it, but other times they don't. Think of BioShock and how the BioShock series now is going to be shifting away from Irrational Games, of course. Ken Levine is no longer helming that franchise, so you have to think about that as well. Like BioShock, we don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know what would happen with Dead Space, but here's the thing. Wouldn't you rather have another Dead Space than not have another one? Just think of it from that perspective. Now, before Dead Space, Visceral Games made licensed video games, guys. Obviously, this is a company that their success didn't last. In October 2017, EA put Star Wars on hiatus and shut Visceral down, which the Star Wars game that they were working on, that had a lot of really cool artwork and stuff as well, guys, and it looked really special in my personal opinion, and it's really unfortunate that they shut them down. I feel like Visceral, they should have merged with one of their other studios, but we'll never know, obviously. One former employee called it a mercy killing. Allegedly, Hennig and Visceral wanted to make a big story-driven single-player game, while EA wanted an open-world adventure that was easier to monetize. EA's Frostbite engine gave people trouble. So did Disney, which insisted on improving the game's smallest details. Visceral was understaffed, and collaborations with EA's other studios didn't go smoothly. And then, of course, we get, you got Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn, which ended up being a really great ordeal. And that really comes down to, the guys over there, Vince Zampella and such, basically telling EA, look, you need to make it in this way. This is going to make it a really great game. And they didn't really believe it, but then you see the sales that came out of that title, and there you have it. But like I said, guys, it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that Visceral shut down. So really, at this point, being in this limbo state with Dead Space, is there a possibility? Absolutely, guys. There's absolutely a possibility that this is something that's going to come out at some point or another. But it's either going to come down to EA saying, look, we want to revisit this franchise. We want to give it to not invest a ton of money into it, but give, a studio an opportunity to create something special here, because they did sell copies of Dead Space. There's no doubt about that. The first two Dead Space games are conscious throwbacks to movies like Alien and Event Horizon. Isaac, the series' protagonist, isn't a soldier or a police officer. He's just a regular guy who must fight his way through infested, confined spaces. And so for a major part of the game, he uses tools, not weapons, to defend himself. He is alone. But Dead Space 3 is different. In a conscious attempt to reach a wider audience, EA added co-op multiplayer to the main campaign. Suddenly, Isaac has a buddy, a stereotypical grizzled, soldier with an equally generic name, John Carver. The tight, claustrophobic levels are replaced by wide open, snow-filled spaces that reminded many people of the popular shooter Lost Planet. And then there you have it. Now, a reboot might make more sense than a sequel. And I actually agree with this. I think that there's a real possibility to having a reboot or a soft reboot than a sequel. Here's why. Isaac's arc was largely resolved after Dead Space 2. It's been over half a decade since the last Dead Space adventure. Maybe it's better to start things over, at least with the soft reboot. then keep the series going. After all, the final piece of Dead Space 3 story content, Dead Space 3 Awakened, ends with a full-on invasion of Earth by hostile forces. That's a pretty great jumping off point for a brand new Dead Space trilogy starring a new character and all kinds of new adventures. Dead Space creators agree. While speaking to Eurogamer, Dead Space creative director Ben Wennett admitted that he'd always imagined that Ellie Langford, a Dead Space supporting cast member, would take the lead role from Isaac for Dead Space 4. The game could have also starred John Carver, Dead Space 3's Player 2, or an entirely new character. With the apocalypse, there was the opportunity for a clean break, when it says, when it thinks that some EA designer could come along and revive the franchise, I think the Dead Space universe is a big enough space for sequels, new stories, and new ideas. As when it puts it, as long as you stick to the franchise's core dread, horror, and great dismemberment combat, in his words, you've got Dead Space. And I agree with this. Guys, when I look at this, and you look at just Dead Space as a whole, there is a universe here to really explore, I believe. Not necessarily, I mean, like, even from an open world setting, but more so where there's that, you're confined to very, like, close quarters on a ship. But I just think that there's more to this world than just 3 games based in Dead Space. It feels like this world is actually massive. Like, there's so much to explore and such. And I want to learn more about. They've even made movies off of it, like animated movies and such off of it. So, that being said, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that we actually get a continuation, because I just believe that this deserves to coexist with other horror movies out there. Maybe it's a good thing that Dead Space 4 never materialized. As mentioned before, Dead Space 3 started pushing the series in a different direction, and as creative director Ben Wennett told Eurogamer, Visceral's plan, Dead Space 4 would have taken things even further. Instead of a linear crawl through a single spacecraft, for example, Dead Space 4 would have been an open-world adventure in which Isaac, or whoever ended up starring, would travel between ships, leaving a trail of necromorph corpses in his wake. As players explored the derelict ships, they'd strip some for parts and use those to fix up others, and would ultimately unravel Dead Space 4's plot by unlocking story data and opening up new exploration routes. The necromorphs' origin story was going to play a big role, and there were going to be all kinds of new undead foes to dismember too. Zero-gravity zombie fights. Dead Space 4 would also have exercised some of the ridiculously expensive one-off action moments, delivering a leaner and meaner survival horror experience. Dead Space 3 didn't make enough money to justify another high-budget sequel, and even while working on the sequel, the Visceral team suspected that it'd be the last one. Maybe that's for the best. Now, look, from what we're hearing here about this, I think Dead Space 4 as an open world or somewhat semi-open world would actually be an interesting concept. Like, going from one ship to the next would be interesting. You go through one ship and then you kind of go off and go to another ship. There could still be some absolutely terrifying elements to it. You could still be horror over action without a doubt, but I think having that semi-open world might make it interesting. I never thought that Gears of War would be a good title in a semi-open world setting or even a full open world setting. But after Gears 5, guys, it kind of changed my mind on it. This is a game that has a very linear story, has, horror elements to it, action elements, of course, to it. But at the end of the day, I really felt that Gears 5, moving in a direction of semi-open world, actually really expanded upon the universe in a way we hadn't seen before. I think Dead Space could do something like that. Even if they didn't, a soft reboot, close quarter combat, kind of going back to really what made Dead Space great in the first place, I would be totally open for. And at this point, guys, we haven't got confirmation of Dead Space 4 is coming, but they're still talking about it. So that kind of tells you something. Maybe they're still kind of, getting people excited. Maybe there's rumblings going on right now, guys, which at the end of the day, there have been many rumblings that Dead Space 4 or a Dead Space reboot was on the way. Let me know, though, guys. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below about Dead Space 4. What are your thoughts? Do you guys want to see a Dead Space 4 or soft reboot? Let me know. And for more Dead Space 4 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. Ninja has become a larger-than-life personality, guys, within the gaming industry. And I think, guys, when I look at what his path has been at this point, he's almost transcended in a number of different ways across the gaming landscape, which I'll get to here in a sec. And what I wanted to talk about here is a comparison for, Ninja as an individual as far as what he is doing at this point, and similar to what a very popular, athlete has done and is continuing to do in his current sport, that being one LeBron James. I want to compare these two guys, and obviously two completely different professions, two completely different people, obviously, but at the same time, when we look at what Ninja has done up to this point and just his growth and what he's done with that is something pretty special. So let's talk about it. So we look at what Ninja's done, guys, and up to this point, Ninja has started to transcend gaming similar to how LeBron James has transcended basketball. And so what I mean by that is this. When Ninja left Twitch to join Mixer, basically what he did with that was not only signing an exclusivity deal worth millions of dollars, but what he was showing other gamers out there was that the gamers as individuals they basically can set their own destiny, can kind of take their destiny into their own hands. And LeBron James did something similar when he went from Cleveland, moved to, kind of took his talents to South Beach in Florida to, of course, Miami with the Miami Heat, came back to Cleveland, and now is in LA. What he did was, and how he's transcended basketball in a major way, is showing that the players have the power to basically dictate their own destiny and how they want to do that as far as their career is concerned. I think it's going to change basketball forever because all the players are going to feel moving forward that they have that power to, and that they're worth more than they actually think that they are. And so Ninja did that in gaming. He basically, his move to Mixer created a ripple effect unlike anything we've ever seen in gaming. So many other, creators and streamers and such signing exclusivity deals here or there, and the movement was crazy. And Ninja, when he signs once again to another, brand or another company, whoever it might be, I believe it's going to once again continue to have this evolution. He did something, guys, that people I don't think really realize the magnitude of what it was he did moving to Mixer. Sure, was it a success at Mixer? I mean, for him it was, because he signed this exclusivity deal worth millions of dollars, same with Shroud. Mixer, of course, failed, but what I'm getting at here is that he showed other gamers out there and other creators out there that you have the power to kind of to kind of create your own destiny. It's you can, just because we're gamers doesn't mean that you can't sign these big exclusivity deals. It doesn't mean that you have to be kind of confined to your space and such. Now, obviously, guys, we're talking about the bigger creators out there, right? The ones that are like the best of the best. When we're talking from a streaming perspective, a content perspective, from even just playing these games professionally at a very high level, we're talking about those people here. And that's why I compare Ninja to what LeBron has done in basketball. Ninja's doing for gaming right now. And I can't wait to see what Ninja's next move is, because his next move is going to continue to solidify this idea, I believe, that the gamers do have, we as creators, as streamers and such, we are our own brands, and we have all these eyeballs watching, these huge streamers, these larger than life personalities and such, and it's just taking time now for brands to realize that. And so Mixer took a chance on Ninja and Shroud. It didn't necessarily work out for them, but at the end of the day, you look at YouTube, you look at Twitch now, you look at all these other platforms that are going to start coming into the fray. And believe me, guys, what Ninja did was a power move unlike anything we've seen in gaming. Him moving to Mixer was huge because it showed that we as the creators, we as the streamers, have the power to kind of dictate our own destiny and kind of set a path for ourselves, that we are worth more than we ever thought we were. And that's what LeBron did. LeBron in basketball basically said, okay, not just that you're worth more, but I can win here, I can, I can form something here, and then I can go back home and do the same thing back home, form a team and win at a very high level. And, being able to do things off the court as well, being able to create I Promise School in his hometown of Akron, Cleveland, and being able to do all these things outside of just playing basketball. He has this motto of being more than an athlete. And what I'm getting at is Ninja is kind of, doing things similar. Now, obviously, he hasn't gone the extreme of what, LeBron has done. But at the end of the day, LeBron's been doing this for a long time, guys. And what I'm saying is we might be seeing someone like LeBron here, but just in the gaming space doing it. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about it. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to hear and see where Ninja's next move is going to be. But let me know, guys, in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about this? Let me know, guys. Let's have a real conversation about it. I've talked on the YouTube channel a number of times, guys, about Deathloop, the upcoming game from Arcane Studios, guys, that I'm actually very intrigued by. I can't wait for this title to release. But what I wanted to go ahead and do in this segment of the show is go over the top 5 things that we want in Deathloop. And when I say we, guys, I'm going to give you guys my opinions here. Some of you may agree, some of you may disagree, but let me know in the comment section below what the 5 things are that you want to see out of Deathloop. So let's get into it. So, guys, as I said, this is one of the most intriguing titles, in my opinion, that's going to be coming out here in the foreseeable future, here in 2020, at least as of right now. What I got to say is this. Arcane Studios, coming off of, the heels of course, Prey as well as Dishonored, this is going to be, a title that seems pretty different, but there definitely has similarities to some of their other games. So at number 1 for me, guys, the story mode that we don't know a whole heck of a lot about at this point in time. I really want the story mode, the single player experience of Deathloop to be a pretty expansive world. I'd love it to be, a relatively expansive world. And what I mean by that is even if it's like a semi-open world or even a full open world would be awesome. But I feel like this is going to be a little more grounded as far as like a little bit more linear of a story. That being said, I would like to see it have like even a semi-open world or kind of expansive to the point where we really start to understand everything behind this world and what it's all about. I'm very intrigued by the time loop that is in this game, and so with that, I really want to learn as much as I can about this game and about the franchise when I dive into it. At number 2 for me, guys, is having multiple playable characters. I think is really going to be important. Now, when I say multiple playable characters, I'm mainly talking about like the multiplayer experiences here, guys. I'm talking outside of Juliana and Colt. I would like to see more like playable characters than just them from a multiplayer perspective, but even having, from a single player perspective, are we able to play as Colt as well as Juliana or as Juliana and play each of their stories separately? Or is it something, because really we've only got, as far as Arcane Studios is concerned, they alluded to you're mainly playing, you kind of take the role as Colt in this game. And so what I'm wondering is, okay, so we take the role as him, but are we able to also play as Juliana after we play as Colt? Or how does that work exactly? We really don't know as of yet, but with that, guys, I'd like to have multiple playable characters from a single player perspective, but also from a multiplayer perspective, which gets me to number 3, guys. This is a game that I think has a real opportunity here to have a very special type of multiplayer experience. And what I'm getting at here, guys, is they kind of alluded to this 1v1 type style where you see Colt and you see Juliana fighting and, dying, and then, they just keep going at it, right? It reminds me of like the 2v2 gunfight in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, except with just one person. What I would like to see is the multiplayer experience to be 1v1, but I'd also love to see it be like 2v2, 3v3, like an arena type shooter. And I think they could do something really special here with the time loop. And so having like I said, 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, even 4v4s could be something really special in my personal opinion. And I think that they have a real good possibility to make this a really special multiplayer experience. Even outside of just, we know Arcane Studios as being like, they create these pretty visceral, cool stories, guys, between like Prey as well as the Dishonored franchise. And so from a story perspective, I think it's going to be great, just knowing Arcane Studios. But also from a multiplayer perspective, I think they could do something special here. And that leads me, guys, to number 4, which is when we talk about the campaign as a whole, I would really like to see multiple different types of enemies, because they kind of alluded to Cold like is going to be fighting other, other enemies out there, but it seems like it's mainly this main focus of Colt versus Juliana, and so I hope there's a number of different types of enemies that we're going up against. I'm hoping that there's a number of different environments, different locations that we are exploring as well throughout the course of the story, right? I think that's going to be really important to bring us back. You could also say, guys, along with that, having earnable items within the multiplayer, or even with the campaign, having things that you earn within the game, whether that's customization items, having things that you earn throughout the course of the journey as you play the game from a multiplayer perspective or a single player perspective, being able to collect things, have emblems and titles and such when you're in the in-game lobbies and from multiplayer, people can see how much time you put into the game. They are able to see all the things that you've earned and such, and you're able to do the same to them. And that's what I think is what really brings people back. If you want to build something special here with Deathloop, I think it's going to come down to really executing well, not only from a single player perspective, but also from a multiplayer perspective, and having reason for people to come back to the game over and over again. And that leads me, guys, into number 5. This might be controversial. And part of me wants this. Part of me kind of wonders, are they going to do something like this because of the time loop? And the only reason I'm saying this, guys, is because of the time loop that they're doing here. But what if Deathloop was tied into one of their other IPs out there, that being like Dishonored or Prey? And it would be really interesting to see Arcane Studios decide to do that here. Part of me thinks they want to make this totally separate from Dishonored as well as Prey. But another part of me says, look, they're doing this time loop. And there's something here that if you're dealing with time or in some way, shape, or form, it could be very interesting to see if they would tie this into one of their current IPs. I'm not saying that they're going to do that, guys. I have no insider information. They most likely will not do that because they're probably going to want Deathloop to just be completely its own thing, similar to how Dishonored's its own thing and how Prey is its own thing. I just think that would be something really interesting and something to kind of keep an eye on at some point or another. But guys, these are the 5 things that I would like to see out of Deathloop. What are the things that you want to see out of the game? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Deathloop content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. I've stated it on the YouTube channel a number of times, guys, that Splinter Cell is one of my favorite stealth games of all time. I think it was one of the best crafted stealth games ever made, and we have been waiting a long time for a continuation of this franchise, to say the least, guys. I mean, it's felt like forever. And what I got to say is that there is more and more, I'm starting to get this feeling that we're going to get a new Splinter Cell at some point or another here in the foreseeable future. Now, obviously, guys, there's a lot of rumblings, a lot of speculation and talk that there is a Splinter Cell game in the making right now, just behind the scenes. And I think that there's been a lot of talk of it. And I think that whether it's a soft reboot, whatever it is, guys, I think that it would actually, as long as it's done well, it could do incredibly well for Ubisoft. It would make a lot of sense, in my opinion, for them to go back to Splinter Cell and kind of go back to this world. In my opinion, I just think that it would do incredibly well. Well, we're kind of getting hints, in my personal opinion, guys, of a Splinter Cell coming at some point. We saw this with Ghost Recon Wildlands. We saw, of course, Sam Fisher return in that, in a, kind of just, return in it, right? And kind of almost made more of like a cameo appearance within Ghost Recon Wildlands. But the thought is that this is a character that is still in the back of the minds of the developers here and of the publisher, that being Ubisoft. And so what I'm getting at is, once again, with Elite Squad coming out, guys, it's going to be, of course, coming to Android as well as iOS, which I would love to see this title actually on consoles as well as PC. I think that would be really cool, but that's neither here nor there. And the big thing here, guys, is that once again, we get Sam Fisher. Once again, him in of course, in Elite Squad is one of the characters in it. And what I'll say about that is, look, guys, this could be another sign that this is obviously a character and a title that they are definitely keeping in the back of their minds, right? I mean, when we look at the landscape of gaming, guys, when we look at stealth games as a whole, I mean, think of like how many are even out there. Off the top of my head, there's not as many stealth games as there used to be. I think of like Hitman. I think of Assassin's Creed, but that has gone away from the stealth. They kind of have done action over stealth, which is, obviously been something that has been a unfortunate thing in my personal opinion. But nonetheless, Splinter Cell could really like rejuvenate the stealth genre in a major way. Now, part of me thinks maybe, giving Sam Fisher, a farewell tour in one last game. Part of me thinks maybe just moving completely away from Sam Fisher moving forward is maybe the best way to kind of move forward. Either way, whatever they decide to do, guys, a soft reboot, moving, kind of doing a one last hurrah for Sam Fisher, or whatever they decided to do, I just think that this is a game that needs to coexist within, just games as a whole. I mean, there is a lot of people who want this game to come out. I mean, there's a lot of people and want a continuation. At this point, it's like Splinter Cell 7. This is what people want. And for some reason, we haven't gotten a, any type of, confirmation that Splinter Cell 7 is in development, but there are certainly rumblings, guys, that there's going to be an announcement sooner rather than later, and I think Elite Squad could very well just give us further clarification that this is a character and a franchise still on Ubisoft's mind, and they are just giving us kind of hints that, look, it's coming. Just kind of wait. It's coming. We're taking our time with it. We want to make it the best Splinter Cell ever made, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with waiting for it, guys. I just want to know that it's coming at some point or another in the future. Because as time goes, we're getting more Rainbow Six games, getting, Ghost Recon games. We're getting more Assassin's Creed games, more Far Cry games, which is fine and dandy. I mean, I'm a fan of pretty much all of those franchises. But Splinter Cell is the one that I would really like to see come back in a major way. We haven't seen it in a long time. We as a community, as a fan base to Splinter Cell, need to voice our opinion to Ubisoft, stating that we want this game made, guys. And that's really what sometimes our voice can move mountains, like in a major way when it comes to getting video games made. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I think that this is a character and a title that is definitely on the minds of the developers and the publishers. So we just got to voice our opinion. In my personal, in all reality, I think we have to be the ones stating, yes, we want more Splinter Cell. Make it happen. And with that, guys, let me know when you see Elite Squad, when you've been seeing all of these rumblings, the talks of Splinter Cell and the continuation here. Elite Squad has Sam Fisher as one of the characters within it. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Elite Squad and Splinter Cell content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.